Hi, this is Elizabeth with Felted Sky Studio, here with the instructions for our Fall Foliage needle felting kit. So if you've purchased the kit, there are just a couple other things you'll want to have before you get started, and the most important one is a foam mat for needle felting. This is going to be the work surface that we're working on, and you can use a different foam if you haven't gotten one from us. You just want to make sure that it's dense enough foam and thick enough that your needle is not going to poke through it. And then you might also want to have a nice sharp scissors handy for the end of the project when we're going to cut off some excess wool. Okay, so now let me just open up the kit and tell you a little bit more about what's inside here. So I'll just pull everything out. So this is called pre-felt, and this is actually made from Kentucky wool grown very near me. So I love that about it. And this is going to be our backing, obviously, the canvas that we are going to use to work on. And then in here we have two preparations of wool. Most of what's in this kit is a batting, so that's what this is. And with the batting, they're nice and fluffy, very textured still, and they'll come in a roll like this. Most of them are blends of multiple colors, so it's really great stuff to work with. We also have just a little bit of roving in here, which is also very nice, and the other landscape kits that I make, most of them have more of the roving, but this one has more batting. So the roving is just coming in more of a thin rope with a bit of twist to it. The fibers are going in pretty much the same direction. So that's the roving. And I just want to mention about the needle here. It comes in this piece of foam board because the felting needle is very sharp and it definitely hurts if you poke yourself with it. So keeping it in the foam board just means that it's not going to get bent or broken, but also no one will get poked. So especially if you have pets or kids in your house, definitely you want to store your needle in the foam board, or sometimes I will take my mat and just poke my needle into the side of the mat to store it in there. So that's just a little bit about keeping your needle safe. And then on the instruction sheet here, I just want to point out that we have a list of colors, so if you want to kind of get organized and find all your colors before you start, you can certainly do that. And then by each step here, these are actually the pictures taken from the video, and so by each numbered step there is another set of numbers, and that is the video timestamp. So if you need to fast forward or rewind, or if you don't want to watch all the video but there are just a few steps that you think you want to see on the video, you could use the timestamps, and that makes it very handy and efficient to move back and forth through the video. Okay, so now I think we're ready to get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is to put on some wood smoke. So that's this color here, and I'll just show you on our original real quick. We're going to put the wood smoke back in the back here, and then it's going to get lots of layers on top of it and surrounding it. But that's what we're going to start with. So I'm just going to take my piece of wood smoke and I'm going to hold here and then pull off the excess. But if you had a piece that wasn't just that size, you could take smaller pieces and arrange them in this section to cover that area. So once that's on, all we're going to do is poke it with the needle, and just the action of poking it, because of the little barbs down at the bottom on the needle, that's going to secure it onto the backing. So we're just going to poke, And you can hear the needle hitting the mat and going in the mat, and that's fine. That's why we're doing it on the mat. And for these projects where you're working on something flat, that's just what happens is you're poking into the mat. So we're just going to poke all over this color. And we want to poke enough that it's kind of flattened out, and you'll be able to see that the fibers are really attaching to the backing. So instead of being fluffy, it's going to kind of get flat and smooth out some. We don't need to worry about the edges too much because this has so many layers that are going to go over top of it that none of that is going to matter. Okay, so now my wood smoke piece is pretty secure there. And the next thing we're going to do is put in our tree trunks on top of that wood smoke. So back here you see we have some little trees back in the distance. So we're going to go right ahead and put those in there. So I'm going to take my black roving here, and the thin end here, if it's not quite thin enough, or if it's not long enough and thin enough, I'm going to just take it, hold very gently with my other hand, and just pull out some more of these fibers so I have kind of a thin little wispy line there. Then I'm just going to lay it down. I'm going to hold with my other hand so that I keep it kind of stretched and thinned out there. And then I'm just going to poke right on that black line with the needle. I'm going to go down to the bottom. Actually, our wood smoke probably goes down a little bit far. We only need to go down probably to about here. This is all going to get covered up, except for the middle part, we'll see. So I'm just poking up and down on the black line with the needle, and then in this case I think I'm going to hold here, and I'm just going to pull off the excess, and then we'll just have this little extra bit. So we can either leave that down here to get covered up, we could cut it off, or I'm going to just fold it back over on itself and make the trunk just a little bit thicker. So you can do a few things with that, whatever you prefer. And so we're going to put in a couple more of these back here. And they don't all have to be straight, they can kind of be doing different things. I want them to look like in nature, not all straight and the same. That one I may just go ahead and leave there. And I think we'll put in 3 or 4 back here. So we're doing it the same way. We're just pulling out the black and then letting those fibers pull out, and just poking them down. And if you make a mistake or you don't like one of the trees you've put on, you can always just pull the roving off. This will fairly easily pull off, and you can try it again. And we could give one of them a little branch if we want to, have some other stuff going on. Just pull out a thin line that kind of veers off there and intersects our tree trunk. And then I'll pull it off here, and then the rest of that will just become part of the trunk. Just poke it right on top of it. And And I'll maybe put in one more back here. So you have some leeway here. You can kind of make this what you want. They all end up a little bit different, and that's fine. That's how they're supposed to be. Okay, so now the next thing we're going to put in is this road. So I think of this as a gravel road here, and we're going to get the color oatmeal for that. And this is going to overlap, really the wood smoke comes down kind of far here, and this is going to go in somewhere almost at the middle. It's going to start, we're going to pull out this end a little bit and lay it in here, and then we're going to pull and arrange this so that it curves down. And then I'll pull off the extra. So we just want to get the basic shape kind of in here. So we're going to do something about like that. So now I'm going to take, and as I'm poking this, you can take the needle and you can push or pull the wool a lot as you're shaping it here right before you attach it. So this is still kind of fluffy and it's not a perfect shape for our road. So as I am putting it in here and poking it down, I'm going to just take and push and pull the wool right where I want it to go before I poke. And I'm going to work a little bit more on my edges first to get them rounded out and placed where I want, and then I'll go back and poke more on the middle part. I'm just going to keep poking until all of this is well attached and pretty flattened onto our backing. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we just keep putting on layer after layer here, is we're going to put in this darker green color called evergreen. So that's going to go in kind of here and then on this other side here and along the road. Okay, so I'm going to get my pieces of evergreen and we're just going to take and pull off a thin piece here and place this right along the road. Then we're just going to start filling in the rest of our evergreen sections here. So I'm going to continue this on over this way, and then just going to tear the pieces, and you can just add in as many pieces as you need to fill in. So on this side, the evergreen kind of comes down to here. And we'll get a little bit more at the side here. Okay, so now we've got something like that, and Now we'll go ahead and poke all of this down. So I might go ahead and speed up the video here just so we can move that along, and you can watch as I just get all of this poked down. And if you need to add extra pieces, I can see maybe I don't have quite enough in here. You just tear off more and add in wherever you need. Or if you have too much on, you just pull it back off. Alright, so we'll speed up the video, and then I'll talk again when we're going to go to the next color. Okay, so I've got all of the evergreen secured here, and I'm not poking it too hard or too much, and I'm leaving really pretty much texture in it. So you can see I need one more little piece here, but we can do that. Some of the things I feel like it gives a little more depth and dimension if we leave, like the road is very flattened out, the wood smoke was very flattened out, but I'm leaving this evergreen kind of popped up off the backing just a little bit. So I did that just by not poking it quite as much and for quite as long. Okay, so the next color that we're going to put in now is this green. So this bright kiwi green, it's called. So I'm going to get that here, and I'm going to put a little bit on this hill here, and then I'm going to put a little bit back behind the road on this piece of evergreen. So something like that, and you can kind of spread out the fibers. And sometimes you want it to be very solid, and other times like we want to spread this out, so we're seeing a little bit of evergreen back behind these brighter green fibers here. So I'm going to put some of this in, something like that. And then on the other side, so we're just trying to make this look like there's a lot going on in this forest scene. Different plants, different trees, light and shadows and stuff going on here. Okay, that looks pretty good. So now I'm just going to do the same thing and do a little more poking to attach all this. Okay, so I think we'll speed up this part again, and I'll get all of this attached. Okay, so that's looking good with our kiwi green. And now we're going to go for this lighter green called grass. And I'm going to pull off a piece of that, and that's going to go in right here. And we'll probably need to overlap it on the evergreen. That might have come down a bit far. So we're going to get little strip of grass in here and just kind of pull it and work it till it seems like it's fitting in the spot we want it to go. While I have this out, I'm also going to take a couple little small tiny wispy pieces and put those back here on our trees that were on the wood smoke color. And I'm also going to take a little piece and put it here behind the road. So we're just giving some more little plant life and more going on in all of our layering. Alright, so once that's on, we'll poke that down. Okay, so now our grass is nicely attached there. And now I'm going to grab the color here called gold. Let me show you on our original how far we've come here. And we're going to put the gold in right here, a little tiny bit starting back here at the road and coming down and covering this part here. So I'm going to kind of pull the end to make a little thin strip here that's going to go along the road. And then as we come down here, we're going to let that go right into this other piece here. It's going to cover this whole bottom corner. Something like that. And you can always go back in and add or take away pieces until you get it laying just how you want. I'm just going to poke this here right along the road. And I like to do the edges first to kind of make sure they're doing what I want them to do. And then I'll go back and do the center. Sometimes this looks like it might be a little bit much there, so we'll just pull off some of the extra. Poke the rest of this down. Okay, I think I might add just a little bit more right here. I feel like that piece got a little too thin maybe. And while we have the gold out, I'm going to put just a little bit over here on our grass green. So a little piece right there. Maybe there are some golden leaves that have fallen on that little hillside. And I'm also going to take a little bit and put it back here, back on our trees in the wood smoke color. Back in the back here. Adding some leaves onto them. This little wispy things going on there. Still want to make sure we can see those trunks though, so you can even take the needle and just kind of push and pull the wool out of the way so that those trunks are still showing through. Okay, and let's see what else we need to do here. I'm going to go back to my grass color, and now that we've gotten this gold in, I'm going to put a little bit of the grass green on top of the gold. Maybe even a little bit more. Okay. So let's see. Let's go ahead and put in a little bit of this foliage color next. So this is a very nice kind of burnt orange color. Lots of colors running through it. So I'm going to lay out a piece here. And I'm going to put a little bit on our hillside with the gold in it. So I'm just going to drop a little piece of it or two in there. And I'm going to put a little bit over on the other side in our gold there. And maybe a little bit even out onto the road. Okay, so let's put those in. Okay, so now we've got those in, and our next step is going to be to put in all the rest of our tree trunks. So here on our original, we have trees over on this side and all of these trees on the other side. So now is when we want to go ahead and do all of those. So I'm going to get my black roving out again, and I'm going to put one in over here. So again, we're just spreading out the roving and then poking right on top of it. And we're not going to get the roving quite as thinned out because we want the trees we're putting in now to be a little bit thicker than the trunks we put in back there on our wood smoke. And then this one, I think I don't want it to come all the way down. I want it to be back in there. So I'm just going to pull, and I think I'll pull off the excess with this one, and I'm just going to poke down to where I want the trunk to stop, and then I'm going to fold that roving back on itself and just poke it till it's all attached. And this one I might give a bit of a branch too in here. So I'm just going to hold it so that it's going to intersect the trunk we just put in. And then I'll pull off to hold and pull off the excess there. And then I'll just join with the trunk, and I'll poke that till it's all attached with our trunk there. And then I'm going to put in maybe 3 trees that are going to come down here, kind of to where the grass piece and the foliage piece were right here. So figure out where that guy's going to start, and put him in here. So I think I'm just going to pull this excess off, and we'll double it back over on itself again. I'm going to poke down to where I want that to start or end, or however you're looking at it, and then could even take and make a tiny little branch with that excess. Just kind of go with the flow on these. They kind of have a character of their own. Might put one in that's leaning a little bit more. We want them to all be a little bit different. And we just kind of see what happens when we start putting them in. Get one more little thin one kind of leaning in close there. Trying to give a little bit of a curve to that guy. Okay, so now we're going to put into, let me just show you one more time where we're at here. We're going to put in two that are a little bit taller and wider. So they're up here, not as far back in the distance, and we want them to be a little more prominent. So we're going to decide where those guys are going and leave the roving a little thicker for them. Okay, and I'm going to poke down here and even do a little shaping at the bottom to give the impression of some roots sticking out here. So before I pull it back and put it back over on itself, I'm just going to do a little extra poking here at the bottom to pull some fiber into kind of a little root shape there. Just poking a little extra there, pulling the fiber down to make the impression of some roots there, and then I'll go ahead and pull the rest off and fold it back on itself. Since it's a little thicker, I might need to poke this one a little bit more. That's pretty good. And I think I also want this tree to have a branch that we'll see veering off of it. So I'll put one of those in here. I just pulled that off, and then I'll go back into the trunk here. Okay, and then we're going to put in one more thick trunk next to that one, or if you feel like you're out of room, you could always leave it off as well, but I think I'm going to fit one more in here. I'm going to pull that, and before I fold it over again, I'm going to give this guy a little bit of a root system too here. Okay, just finish poking this one. Up here at the top, it's going to get covered up by all of our leaf colors, so I'm not going to worry about that too much. Then on the other side, we need to put in a few trees as well. So I think I'm going to have one that's coming down maybe just to this section here and not all the way. So I'm going to tear that off. And we're going to put two more little guys that are coming down into this grassy field, or springing up from it, as the case may be, but since we're starting at the top and working down, put them down into this section. I'm going to make another one pretty thin here. And if ever you have one that's too thin, you can just go right back over it with another piece of roving. And if it's too thick, you can try and pull some roving off and do it again. Okay, and then we just have one more that's going to come down into this foliage section and be a nice tall tree here on the other side. And get my roving spreading out here. You can see there's kind of a thicker section of roving that was up here, and it's a little thinner down here, so I might have to go over this a bit. But it might be possible just to kind of fix that as I'm getting my tree trunks here and going back up. I mean my little roots here. I left that a little thicker so that I could fill in the part that was kind of thin. And I think we'll do maybe one branch on this tree. I'm going to start that one right on the trunk and then pull off over to the left. And most of that will be covered up, but we might see a little bit of it. Okay, so there are our trees. That part does take a little while, and it's probably the most difficult part, is working with the roving to get nice trees in. Alright, so let me show you. Now we're going to put in these little light yellow trees back here. So that is our color corn silk here. And I'm just going to pull off little parts of it and kind of fold it over and arrange it a little with my fingers, and then we'll put some in back here. Figure out how we want that to look. And then we'll do a little bit of that on this other side. Just kind of decide what shaping you want for your little trees here. Okay, so now I'm going to poke this down. And I'm making sure that I'm not going to cover up all of our nice trunks and branches, but some of them do get covered up. Okay, and then I'm going to find my little piece of pumpkin roving here. And I just like this color so much that I wanted to put just a little bit in. The only place we're really going to put that is right here. Unless you have some other places that you would like to add some. Just had to get a little bit of that in somewhere. I might go ahead and put just a little bit down here in this grass. And we could find somewhere on the other side if we wanted to as well. But we're not doing a whole lot with that. Okay, now I think we are ready to put in foliage. So this is going to go on the top and then just a little bit in here, kind of filling out our trees now. So I'm just going to take a minute to arrange it here. Okay, so with the color foliage there, we're going to have something like that. And then we'll poke that down. I'm going to leave pretty much texture in this as well, so we want it to be attached and stay in place, but I'm not going to poke lots and lots of it because we want a lot of texture in it to look like leaves. Okay, and then I'll just check, and I might have a few spots that need just a little bit more. You can always go back and fill in. Mostly that's going to be where our frame is, if you have a frame. But if not, you'll want to fill in right to the edges. Okay, and then the last thing we're going to put in is our really pretty bright red color. This is called Poppy. So I'm going to put some in over here. And then we're going to put in just a little bit on the other side. Okay, so we'll poke that down, and same as with foliage, we're not going to We're not going to poke it so much that it's all the way flat. Just want it to be attached. Okay, the only thing left to do is just decide if you want to overlap any more foliage in any of these spots. You might want it to overlap that poppy just a little bit on this side. So you can just decide if there are any other little places you want to work on before we decide that we're finished. But I'm thinking that this might be done. Okay, so what we're going to do is just pull it up off of the mat. So it gets kind of stuck because of the fibers that have poked down into the mat, but it will be fine. Just give it a tug and it will come right off. And then we're going to grab a scissors and flip it over and just trim off the excess here from the sides. Okay, and then I like to put it back on the mat once it's been trimmed and just look to see if there are any parts that need a little more poking. So sometimes when you pull it up off of the mat, the fibers detach a little bit and the places that you thought were good need a little extra work. Just put it back down and see if there are any spots that you want to poke a little bit more. Just making sure that everything is in place and looking good. Okay, so now I'll show you what it looks like if you're going to put it in a frame. So here's our frame, and at this point you might need to trim it more. So we'll see how it's fitting here. Sometimes you need to trim down a little more to get it to fit in the frame. And this is going in well, so we'll go ahead and do our hinges here and then flip it over. Okay, so here's what we have, and I hope that you really enjoyed doing this project and that you like the way that yours turned out. So if you want to check out any of our other kits or see what other supplies we have if you want to make other things now that you have started felting, you can find me on Etsy with the username Felted Sky. Or we have a website up, which is feltedsky.com. So thanks again for joining me, and as always, happy felting.